What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. Before we get going, I would like to mention that I am putting together an email subscription-based newsletter. If this is something you'd like to be a part of, let me know down below in the comments section, or feel free to shoot me an email. My email is in the description of the video, and I can certainly add you to the list. I'm going to be sending out the first one this week to the people who let me know down below or by email, and we can sort of test pilot this. It's completely free, and I would like to eventually have a site up and running where people can go to it and sort of subscribe there. However, for now, like I said, shoot me an email or let me know down below in the comments section. I can add you to the list. It's going to be a newsletter consisting of about 5 to 10 stocks, depending on the week's scans that are ideal for swing trading. So good setups, both from the long and short side. So we'll see if we can get a little bit of everyone in there. And yeah, if you're interested in that, let me know. Without further ado, I would like to get back into the regular topic of the video, which is the weekly watch list, where I do a technical analysis on the broad market, so SPY, the Qs, and IWM, and then some companies. We have Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, ROKU, Microsoft, AMD, McDonald's, and Amazon. Without further ado, let's hop into the broad market. Alrighty, so hopping right in, we are on our SPY weekly chart here, weekly chart. You can see we had a nice week, a bit of a hammer candle right off of our previous highs, the group of them. So we had this one, and this one, very tightly close together, but I have them all marked off because they're significant reference points as we move in the upwards direction. You can see our tail came down and touched almost all of them, filling this little gap that we had in the chart. And now that we filled it, prices continued to move in the upwards direction, and we set a new all-time high, which we'll mark off on the daily chart. Overall, the trend is up. Obviously, we have our 200 way down here. We have quite a distance away from it now, as well as the 50. You can see how this week really set the tone. Again, we had a big engulfing candle here, really set the tone that we did want to push up towards those all-time highs and eventually break them. The S&P cash ES is at 3,000. We're not quite there in SPY yet. We're not quite at the $300 mark, but I definitely think it does happen over the course of the next week or two. Alrighty, so zooming in here, you can see why I had all these reference points marked off. You can see we respected them quite nicely. You can see a couple tails touching down here, acting as resistance on the way back up, and then once we got above the gap fill here, beautifully right down to this previous all-time high. So I think we do hit 300, as I said previously, and I do think we even come up and test this trend line. You can see it's really not that far away, only a few dollars away from 300, and then a few more dollars away from that, whatever it becomes, 302, 379, thing like that. So I think there's a lot of upwards pressure right now. There's not very many sellers stepping in with big magnitude and pushing prices down. You can see volumes relatively stagnant. That's sort of the summer volume coming in and just kind of dribbling off, whereas back here we had plenty of volume with lots of volatility. So as things sort of just dribble higher, I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, to see a trend line touch up here. Any sorts of pullbacks, we're looking for support to come back into play down around 290 on anything major, and even this trend line here, as you saw on the overall weekly chart, would be fine for a pullback. So that puts us, if that happens over the course of a few weeks, back around the 290, maybe just a little bit lower, sort of this support zone down here. The Qs haven't quite advanced as far as SPY and the S&P market. However, you can see they're just at all-time highs now. What that pretty much means is we have a lot of pressure building up below all these resistance points. You can see we sort of attempted to get past it there on Thursday, or actually that would have been Wednesday. But with a shortened market, we had some weird things, weird volume. Price action was kind of choppy. I wouldn't consider it a break of that level completely. So I think the pressure is still mounting. I think the potential is still there for it to move higher. Once that breaks, who knows? Does it want to go to 200? $10 is certainly a lot on the Qs. However, it is certainly a possibility if we get a nice break after all this pressure has been building below the 191 50-ish, 191 26-ish level that we have here. Anything on the downside, we're looking for it to respect our supports. So down here at 187.53 does come in from past history. It's also acted as resistance here, support here. So that's one reference point on the downside. Below that is 182.79 and the 50 SMA. But ideally, I really do think that the market does keep dribbling higher throughout the rest of the summer. Alrighty, so moving into the Qs here, you can see that we're just about half back on this big move to the downside. And we haven't really progressed anywhere near our all-time highs. So that's something notable to keep in mind. However, if you look at sort of what's been forming, it's really just a consolidation channel where the prices have been moving back and forth, up and down, and what is this, about a $10 to $12 range. Again, the key resistance level here is right in this zone between 158.12, 159. You can see just all of the pressure mounting. We thought it was going to break here, ended up being a fake break for the pullback, but who knows? Maybe we're going to attempt that again as the market continues to dribble higher. We have some reference points, obviously this thick resistance zone, and then ultimately the high where the fake break happened, and that is at 161.10. So keep that in mind on the upside. Downside's mapped out. We have our moving averages sort of close and tight together now, so they should act as strong support below. Anything lower than that, we have 151. I would play 150 the whole dollar as well. Alrighty, so we're starting off our companies with Apple. Apple looks pretty good to make a move on up to 208. That's our next resistance point now that we are above our previous resistance here at $200. It could even go all the way to 215 based on the high of this wick here, depending on if the market, again, just dribbles in the upwards direction and continues to move higher. Anything on the downside, we would like to see this act as support. It sort of acted as support down right here on the back test, and now it does look like it wants to move higher, like I said. Anything lower than that, if that gives, we're looking at 195.25, and anything after that is our moving averages, first the 50, and then the 200 here. I like to keep Netflix zoomed out for a little bit just so you can see how tight of a range this is compared to some of the past history where it's been moving quite a bit. So that being said, this is I guess you could call it a period of balance. It's essentially trading sideways in a range, and it looks like we're starting to approach the upper end of that range here at 386.80. And my idea here for Netflix is that the price will break that level and then continue up to its all-time high, which is right around $423.21. So that's what I'm watching for on a longer term horizon on Netflix. If we get rejected here at 386 and the consolidation continues, that's fine. I would like to see this level hold, or ideally something higher than that level hold at 342. That way we are putting in some higher lows and the pressure is building in the upwards direction. So that's sort of where I'm at on Netflix. I want to see the break of 386.80 for a higher move to up to the 420s. Jumping in with Tesla, you can see we have broken our downtrend here. You can see there was nice action around it where the price sort of paused and wasn't sure if it wanted to break. Eventually got above it, a couple of big gap ups, but the prices have faded each time as we saw in some of the trade recap videos. So we are sitting right at a critical support here based on a previous low or set of lows. I would say based on this little hammer that we have here, prices do want to continue in the upwards direction. We could even draw in a bit of a trend line here on Tesla where we see something like this developing. So if we see a pullback into this level, it could potentially be buyable. I'd say the overall trend has not been reversed, and this might just be a pullback in the big overall downtrend. As you can see, our moving averages are still pointing both in the downwards direction. So keep that in mind if you do decide to do any longer term trades on Tesla. But being so volatile, I would just day trade this one. Alibaba is trying to figure it out. Big gap up. It's starting to fade, so I would say the gap's most likely going to fade at least to the high of this candle around 172. So a little bit more to go in the downwards direction. However, once we get there, who knows, maybe we could see a gap fill reversal and reattempt our high here at 178.12. If we get over that, there's plenty of room to run, I'd say up to 185 based on some of these highs in here where resistance started to creep in, but ultimately the overall resistance is up here at 195.59 and our big old support down here at 150, the whole dollar mark. So I'd watch to see which direction this wants to head, but right now I think we see a pullback to fill the gap and then a move higher up to at least test our recent high. Facebook's been a bit of a wacky one with this big V-shaped pattern that we see here. Lots of gaps, not really clean movement in one direction or another, kind of broken downwards movement, big gap up, sporadic. But right now we're sitting right at a resistance point here at 198. I would just call it $200, again, just rounding up. So if we can get above 200, I'd say Facebook looks good to move back into a range where it was previously trading. Could eventually fill this gap all the way up here to 218. Again, that's quite a bit away, but it could always happen. Maybe the gap fills to the low of the candle, only 214, but hey, still a nice move in the upwards direction. Anything on the downside, if we see a rollover here, I would like to see the 50 SMA act as support. We do have some sort of, that's a little steep, but we have an uptrend starting to build, and we'll see how it reacts to this previous downtrend and which direction will overall prevail. NVIDIA has really respected its support and resistance lines, which is why I've left so many of them on the chart. You can see down here we had support, previous support, support. It goes on and on. So all of our areas are mapped out for us. We have a beautiful doji hammer, dragonfly hammer, whatever you want to call it, right off of our 50 SMA. So I think the next leg is in the upwards direction. Look for resistance to come into play at 164, 71, 165, and then if we can break that and get over it, we're clear to go up to 174.30 just about, which is going to coincide with our 200 SMA. Keep in mind it is in a downwards trend. We could draw in something like this, which is kind of mirroring the moving averages right now, but that could be the next point of resistance before we necessarily get to that 174.30. So keep those areas and all of these supports and resistances in mind on NVIDIA. ROKU is a real simple one. After we made this massive move up that day, we did continue to move higher, set a new all-time high, starting to pull back right into the 50 SMA, starting to recover. We did breach this level of resistance here at $95, so I'd say we do continue up. If we can get through the $100 whole century mark there, that would be great. We could see a move up to 105 or even the high there at 108. Again, this really depends on what the market does as a whole. If the market wants to move higher, I wouldn't be surprised if ROKU does reattempt its all-time high. Microsoft still doing its thing, putting in new highs. A bit of a brutal day there, but just to pull back into our support level. We did see a little breach of it here, but good thing we left it because it did act as support again in the future. So we're looking at a break here above this level at 138. If we do see that, I would say, again, going to put in a new all-time high. Could potentially move to 140 the next whole dollar and see something like that. Pressure does look like it's sort of mounting right underneath this level. Look for the break. Any sort of pullback into this support zone, I would say, would be viable. AMD looks sort of similar to Microsoft, hasn't quite made it all the way up as close to its all-time high, but again, just a pullback into the overall uptrend. You can see based on this white dotted line, every time it comes into it, it sort of bounces in the upwards direction. Right now, I'd say we do need to clear this $32 before we see an attempt back up to the 34 range. So if we can get through this resistance, I'd say we are looking good. Anything into the support zone, I would say could be viable just because it's almost a super support now. We do have this price level here, the horizontal level at $30, just about coinciding with an area on our uptrend trend line. So I'd say if it gets into that, could be a nice buy opportunity and make money on the way back up. McDonald's is chugging, just making new highs all the time. You can see after we look at this, just beautiful. Nice resistance level here, right around 205, 206. Once that gave, nice break to the upside, retesting the support trend line, bounced right off of it nicely. I'd say we're looking at 215 in the near future based on this little move here. If we see a little consolidation sideways action, another move in the upwards direction, McDonald's just keeps chugging along. Let's draw in this level. If we see any sort of pullbacks, I would like to see this area on the chart hold as support. That's right around 206. Anything lower than that sort of puts it back in the range. Could potentially develop a head and shoulders pattern, which would not be good for McDonald's. We're looking for it to hold this at least, or better yet, hold this support trend line. Amazon sort of looks like Facebook with this flying V pattern. However, I would say it does look good to come back up to 1964.50. If we can get a move back up to there, that will determine whether or not prices want to continue up to our 2050 level, or if they want to sort of roll over there, consolidate further, and just sort of bounce around in a channel between somewhere between this high and this set of lows down in here based on this. So I would say keep an eye on Amazon to sort of go sideways in this channel. If we do see any sort of upwards action, we're looking at 2050 on the upside. Anything on the downside, we're looking at 1825. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, let me know down below in the comments section. Also, let me know what you think about that newsletter. If you want to be a part of it, shoot me an email. Let me know down below in the comments section. That would be awesome. Leave the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I hope you all have a green trading week.